Remember that American League thing we did yesterday? We're going to do that, but for the other league now. There are two leagues in Major League Baseball. So we are going to tell you one thing that we're watching for the final 10 days of Major League Baseball's regular season for every team in the National League. Aram has a trivia question for me off the top. And we got to talk about the craziest elbow surgery you've ever heard of and why it might not be the worst thing in the world. Jack Aram Just Baseball Show. It is presented by BetMGM. Today is Thursday, September 19th. Do we want to do the trivia question or do we have something like not baseball related to, slowly but surely get the ball rolling for the first minute of the podcast? I feel like
Uh,
that's
classic.
commonplace.
Yeah, classic podcast open. Talk about thing podcast is not about.
Yeah, do you
Uh,
guys have a personality outside
yeah.
of baseball on the Just Baseball Show?
The thing is like at least I'll speak for myself. I hardly do.
I don't. Yeah.
So I'd say you're the most multifaceted of the trio in terms of like expanding your horizons beyond baseball.
Yeah,
Uh,
but think about what I do when I get off the Zoom for Just Baseball. I go to a ballpark and I
oh,
do
I know. I'm not saying you're great in any regard, but it just relative to Uh, I think me and Peter only watches sports movies, which is
Peter.
that's the craziest thing by far. Like that movies for me are like my unplug. He watches like sports and like loves baseball movies. Like
He's like, I want to watch baseball history talks. I'm like,
yeah,
really? I
yeah.
don't. I have no interest in those.
I want to unplug today. I've been feeling it. It's dog days of the season. I'm gonna unplug and watch Moneyball for the eighth time. Like that's Peter. That's what he does. So, no, I mean, it's not really. I don't have anything off the top. I'll have to think about that a little bit more because for me, my only other thing that I really get into is like hip hop and rap and music in general. And I could probably do a separate podcast on that. But that'll be some off season conversation because there's some things I wanted to discuss in that and some parallels. But I want to talk Shohei Ohtani
Real
and
quick, just to clarify, your favorite artist is Playboy Cardi. Is that right?
no, but I know some hip hop heads, some rap heads will say that that's like an uncultured take, but I'm convinced that Playboy Cardi is a joke that I'm not in on. I just don't know.
There are some groupthink people. Like he kind of seems like the Bobby Altoff of the hip
Yeah.
industry. Like all of a
Uh,
sudden she's here and she's the biggest person in podcasting. It's like,
he's done
wow.
some influential things, but like it's tough. That's for just hip hop or just rap. But uh,
Best part of this is we already killed the 2 minutes we needed.
yeah,
So here
done,
we go.
done. Checked it off. We did part one of how to do a podcast. Part two. Now you start talking about the thing that you talk about,
Yeah.
but in a fun segue.
Right.
Shohei Ohtani. I'm gonna go. So when people are listening to this, I would have actually covered the game already. So maybe he went yard twice and he got to the 50-50 threshold. That would be pretty crazy. If not, I'm also going to be there on Thursday. What do you think and we don't know for sure yet until it goes to auction.
Yeah.
But what do you think the 50-50 ball, so the 50th home run, estimates, this was actually by Darren Ravel at Collect, which is his media company,
Yeah.
covering uh, collectibles. I actually think it's a really, really cool idea.
Yeah.
And I think Darren's doing a great job with that. But he talked to Ken Golden, one of the biggest auctioneers out there and a couple other auction houses, surveyed kind of what they were thinking and got a ballpark number of what it is believed that ball could be worth, that 50-50 ball. I honestly think both estimates, based on some other examples, are conservative. But what do you think the Shohei Ohtani ball is worth? Technically speaking, it's not like a specific record.
Right.
And you know how baseball is with a specific record. Yes, no one's done it, but there's a difference between doing something that hasn't been done and like breaking a record, right? Like, didn't Acuna technically do something statistically that had
He
never been
did.
done last year? We all
Yeah.
already kind of forgot about it. Like I do think that that's a part of it, and that's why like the Aaron Judge ball, which it was not as much of a clear cut record, right?
Right.
The Judge ball goes for 1.5 million at auction. Is that what it went
1.5
for?
at Golden. Yeah.
And
So
that was
yeah.
but there's the Yankee history to that as well, right? Where
Right.
he's surpassing Roger Maris. Like there's so many layers to that it's a bit of an apples to oranges thing. But I'm just curious, push that one aside. I don't really know what other examples of like record breaking baseball sales there have been in recent memory, but like, what do you think the Shohei Ohtani ball would be worth? Because it's not going to be near the Judge number. Like that's just a different beast. I don't I it just is the Yankees effect, I think, and the Maris side of it too.
Fair. So I was actually my knee jerk before you kind of laid that was I was going to go higher than the
Yeah,
Judge ball. I was going to go to like two because Ohtani, everything that guy touches turns to gold on the collectibles market. Like
yeah.
it's all about Ohtani on the collectibles market. So I was thinking it elevates, but you laying out the Maris thing and the Yankee thing and the concretely passing an individual thing makes a lot of sense because like Acuna's base at auction when he got to 40, 70 is not going like that.
No.
Now, I think there is an Ohtani effect where Ohtani's ball, like two X's, Acuna's base when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to that kind of thing. Um, I would say one,
So even less than that is the
really?
estimate, which is crazy. So just to put it in perspective, people just love records, which is the wild part. Like a Barry Bonds, record breaking home run, 756 in 2007, obviously went for $752,000. But you'd imagine what that would go for now it'd be probably $3-4 million.
Right.
But what's pretty shocking is the estimates. I think they're really large and it's a big number, but I honestly would have thought it would be a little bit more given what we've seen with the Ohtani market and everything, like you said. Estimates are anywhere from 250,000 to $500,000
Oh,
on
Steve
them.
Cohen should add that to his art room, dude.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what's shocking. Like that's a lot of money, but like I don't know. I just felt like that was pretty conservative. We'll see. Maybe it ends up going way crazier. You have to think about the international side of it and that
Right.
whole thing, right? Where you're going to have just people all over the world interested in this
Right.
baseball. But I was just pretty shocked. Like I would have expected, Otani's record breaking, not record breaking. I guess that's the problem. Otani's, first doing something home run. But I think that just shows you that maybe these statistical thresholds are not anticipated to mean as much as a true record breaking home run. And I know people have like mixed thoughts about like whether Aaron Judge's home run was like a record because it's the AL record,
Right.
but the Yankees wrinkle in that is what really, ended up I think making it what it was and making it so impactful. But yeah, I honestly thought it would be in the millions as well. So it'll be interesting to see how much that actually goes for, and maybe those estimates were a little too conservative.
I think so. I like because you're right. An entire continent is going to get involved in this, I think, where you add the global element of the Ohtani price. And I think Ohtani, like the sheer fact that it is a Shohei Ohtani baseball, there have been cards that have gone for more. There have been
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani
Oh,
cards. So like I would look at the most expensive Shohei Ohtani card ever sold. Like if we have a what is it, one of one is a super fractor. I would look
yes.
at that. I would equate his baseball where he goes 50-50 and that one of one being essentially the same. And
Yeah.
that's $1 million piece of cardboard, I think we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. That's the craziest part. So I'm just fascinated by the whole collectible side of this thing and how
Yeah.
that unfolds. And that's what makes baseball so cool too, is like I like the souvenir aspect. I don't want to turn this into a McCovey Cove Dave conversation,
Right.
but the souvenir aspect is so cool because you can have something incredible happen and it just lands in the lap of a fan.
Yeah.
That fan that catches this should absolutely hold out for the right opportunity and the right deal. Shohei Ohtani wouldn't expect any different as well. That's different than a 27-year-old's first career home run or something like that, or their first grand
Yeah,
slam.
the
But
number 56 is really important to do.
yeah, so I don't need to rehash that. He had some other brutal quotes. Elliot Ramos hasn't earned the ball back yet.
Uh,
Like some other players, if he has a good career with the Giants, then in Mr. Dave's eyes, then Ramos would earn it, and maybe he can get it back in 10
it's
years.
like a bond. Put it away for 7 years and you made $10.
If that quote doesn't tell you enough about intentions, then I give up. But yeah, so that'll be fun. I'm gonna have my girlfriend, I think, just wait out there in right field on the Thursday game and just hope it lands in her hands. I'm
You
gonna
know,
get her a glove, maybe just get things going, and then I'm gonna stand on business and give it back to Ohtani for free.
you know who's
That'd
going to
be
give her an elbow to the sternum out there.
uh I know who's gonna be out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be. I hope he's not there, but
All
I'm
I'm
sure he
saying
will
is I
be.
would take Ellie in a fight. If like if you threw both of them there and it's like let's go. One
Oh,
of you is making it out, I'm taking Ellie.
I agree with that. I've seen that guy up close and personal. But the and that's Hample, by the way. Um, the last thing I wanted to say on that front is, do you think that section, the game like the game where he's one away, will
Yeah.
actually be sold out for a Marlins game? It was
Uh,
buzzing yesterday, but sold out's a different beast.
Yeah, I think it'll be darn close, and I think that that section will be full. I don't think that there will be an empty seat. Now,
Yeah.
were those seats sold for that section? I have no idea. I think the Marlins could do a very good job of placing ushers that are like, hey, you're not in this section. Go sit down the third base line like you paid for.
Yeah.
But I do think
They
if it
don't
was
do that,
kind of
by the
free
way. Since
reign,
since I was in high school, I paid $5 and then just walked down to the first row.
that's what I did at White Sox games, man. Like I
Yeah,
sat second
100%.
row, essentially behind home for sale starts. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So it'll be a fun chase, and I'm glad that the Marlins fans that have actually stuck it out through the year get something exciting to watch. And it does remind me of when I was a kid going to see Griffey chase 600 and that little section at Pro Player Stadium out in right field. It was just packed to the brim. I think there
Right
was more
next to
people
that
there
big
than in the
tarp.
rest of the entire stadium.
It was right next to that big tarp, right? That tarp.
Yeah, yeah, but it went even further to the right. So yeah, but yeah, that stadium was amazing. I do
Gotcha.
miss that ballpark. But on the less exciting side, but interesting
Yeah,
is the surgery that we're going to talk about here because I'll let you just lay it down, but I am sad about it because he is one of my favorite pitching prospects. He graduated, but yeah, floor is yours.
it's Christian Scott of the New York Mets, and Nate Heisler heads the baseball division at Clutch Sports. So he is Christian Scott is repped by Clutch Sports, which is Rich Paul's thing, and
I
Nate put
didn't even
this
know
out on
that.
Twitter. Yeah, New York Mets right-hander Christian Scott will undergo a combined traditional TJ ligament replacement along with the internal brace, what is known as a hybrid procedure performed by Keith Meister early next week. Then went on to say, we look forward to supporting Christian during his journey back and all that being said. 25-year-old Christian Scott really broke out last year, right? College reliever that blossomed into one of the more disgusting pitching prospects in baseball. Looked the part in Syracuse, got up for his first taste with the Mets, and hell, looked the part there too. Christian Scott would absolutely be a firm piece of this rotation for the Mets for the final two turns as they try and secure that wild card berth or 2 games clear of the Braves as we talk right now. But Christian Scott will likely miss the overwhelming majority, if not the entirety, of the 2025 season with this. The thing that makes this, what sucks to say, is like the thing that makes this unique, because it feels like there's a pitching prospect every day that gets cut, whether it's TJ or the brace, is that it's both. And I tried to do some reading there, and it's like, oh, was his elbow like mashed potatoes? Is that why we're doing both? The answer is no.
No, yeah,
What this essentially is a repair to the damaged ligament, and then you wrap it with that. Is it collagen, the internal brace? It wraps it with like a fibrous, essentially layer. The internal brace is what Strider got. By my understanding, it's what Ohtani got. And that is a truncated timeline compared to typical Tommy John surgery. Tommy John surgery is a true ligament replacement. You're getting a new UCL. Usually they take it from the wrist, sometimes they'll take it from the ankle, and they're going to like figure eight thread that thing on the inside of your elbow. The brace is taking a sprained UCL, so a partial tear, and wrapping it with almost like it's almost like you're wrapping it in bubble wrap. You're giving yourself like a nutrient rich film over the top of your UCL to hold it intact. My understanding is that this is taking a new ligament and then wrapping it as well.
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's how I understood it. And, again, we might be a little bit off here, but what I can say confidently is that it's more of, I think, a unique approach here to, I think, prevent the re injury side, right? Where it seemed like you have the Tommy John, and now we're seeing Tommy John surgery at a recurrent rate as high as ever as well, where
Yeah.
it's more of a timeline of, okay, great, you got this Tommy John. How long is this going to buy you until it goes again? So I like the idea here of maybe being a little bit um, anticipatory in your approach where, okay, that just naturally it's silly to pretend, okay, you put a new UCL in. Now that UCL is never going to suffer any damage. You're throwing a baseball and you're throwing it 95 miles an hour. It's going to eventually wear. It's just a matter of if it happens when you're done playing or if it happens a little bit earlier before you're done playing, or and that's really what it's become here. So I think the most frustrating aspect and what we had talked about when the arm injury conversation really came to a head earlier in the season was I'm just tired of doing the same thing here and just expecting any different result, whether it be the way that pitchers are handled, whether it be the same surgeries and the same process. And again, I'm not a doctor, and sometimes there's no better option. But I was just like, man, I would just wish there would be some research done and some things to like just try something different. And you don't want to treat players like Frankenstein. You don't want to
Right.
experiment. So it's like, how can we try something different that also is still equally as safe? And I think this is exactly that, where it's okay, you get the UCL, and from what I understand, then you're also like insulating it
Yeah.
well so that it can hopefully have more tread and last longer. So I don't know how this will work, but I am eager and I feel like excited is the wrong word because it sucks that a player's still getting a surgery,
Right.
but it is giving me a little bit of optimism that we're at a point here where you can try slightly different things and maybe just maybe this will yield better results. If this cuts, the need for Tommy John down or recurrent Tommy John by 8-10%, that's enough for me to be a huge game changer. And we just need to
No doubt.
slow this epidemic. So again, may not work, but I'm just happy that we're trying something different. And I'm going to be paying close attention to how Christian Scott recovers. And on the most important side, though, not to digress too far, he
Yeah.
was he was my dark horse rookie of the year pick.
Yeah.
Such an awesome story. South Florida kid. I don't know him personally, but I've
Yeah.
heard nothing but great things about him from mutual friends or people that have played with him
Right.
and the way he goes about his business. So very much wishing him a speedy recovery there. And I know when he gets back, he's going to be a fixture in that Mets rotation.
To build on your point, this seems like a cutting edge procedure. This seems like a forward thinking type of procedure, which is really cool. And I like your point, slow the epidemic. We're not ending the epidemic.
Impossible.
UCL tears are not going away. We cannot prevent the first Tommy John. You're born with that ligament and they go in there to surgically repair it. But if we can get close to preventing the second Tommy John, we're making advances. And it feels like this is the first step in a possibility of making advances in that field. Problem is, it's going to take 10 years to figure that out because Christian Scott, like, we need to see him work with a UCL intact when he's 35, 36 years old and he retires. And he only needed this one surgery when he was 25 years old. So fingers crossed that that is the case. And again, like hoping for a very speedy recovery. Excited to see how this works. And I wonder what the return to play will look like because
Yeah, it seems
the,
like it would be the same as traditional TJ, I would think,
I would think so
but
because it's a new ligament that you're working with versus the
exactly.
brace is the same ligament. It is a collagen coated fiber tape that essentially is like grafted around the current UCL. But like Kyle Bradish had a sprain is not a complete tear, I don't think, unless I missed a report that it was completely torn, but he got Tommy John surgery. I want to know why he didn't get the brace when a Strider got the brace and he kept his ligament and Ohtani got the brace. Ohtani was also on his second elbow procedure. Like it's all convoluted in my brain, but if this works for Christian Scott, I'm a very happy camper because the last thing I need is to see more guys go under the
Oh,
knife for the second time in like 7 years.
that's the worst part, especially. And he's a guy that saw uptick in workload, uptick in velocity at the same time. Those are usually going to be candidates. The silly part of it too, though, is like the Mets sent him down, and he threw another however many innings in AAA to preserve his innings.
He
That's
was operating at a volume. Like he was at a pretty high volume in
that
triple.
part was dumb, man. He could have thrown another 40, 50 innings at the big league level this year, but at the end of the day, that's all moot. The Mets rotation has actually not really been a problem. So we'll build off that, get back, and clearly he's proven that he's going to be a guy. So I'm very eager to see how he comes back. And I think with the advancements that we've seen from the Achilles side of things, you look at the NFL, guys are getting back, way quicker, almost half the time that they were getting back from Achilles injuries in the past. And I think it's a similar type of hybrid surgery that they've figured out there. There's no way that the Achilles should be outpacing the UCL. I feel like so. I'm eager to see if this does work, and wishing Christian Scott a speedy recovery. And he's going to be a big part of what the Mets are doing now that they look like they could be a contender, now and next year as well. But this does also create an interesting conversation about the Mets rotation for next year because they
Yep.
got a lot of free agents coming up. And they've got some things that they're going to need to figure out. They don't have that many other arms coming up through the pipeline that I think you can fully count on.
I was going to
So
say they had a very underwhelming year when it came to the minor leagues, and
yeah,
Sproat's awesome. Sproat's breakout is great, but like Tidwell, I was expecting a better year from Tidwell. I was expecting a better year from Adam Hamill. Like there are guys like
even
that
if
where I was,
Vassal, like I didn't
yeah.
love him, but I thought he could, earn his way up there to at least be like a five or a spot starter, and he just wasn't even good enough to do that. So yeah, they've got some guys, Jonathan, guys at the lower levels that have been
Mhm.
awesome, but now in Double A. But yeah, I think overall the guys that could like project right in there next year have not really thrown as well as they'd like. So I think they're gonna end up paying a lot of these 1 year guys that they brought in, and I think they've got something working there at the big league level with their pitching coach and everything.
Luis Severino going to retire in New York Met.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the National League, and one thing that we're watching with each of the 15 teams in the NL. Before that, quick break. Again, here's the deal. One thing that we're watching for the final 10 days of Major League Baseball's regular season for every National League team. We're going to go NL East, NL Central, NL West. We're going by team in order of the standings as they are on Wednesday, September 18th. So with the NL East, we're going to go Phillies, Mets, Braves, Nats, and Marlins. We'll start with the Phillies here. My thing that I'm watching, what do we got with Ranger Suarez? 6 starts since the All-Star break. I know that he's been banged up, but a 4.5 ERA in those 6 starts. I know what Wheeler is in the postseason. I know what Nola is in the postseason. Kyle Schwarber is swinging it as well as anybody in Major League Baseball right now. I know what Bryce Harper is in the postseason. Hell, dude, I know what Nick Castellanos is in the postseason. I know what Ranger can do. I wonder if it's going to look like that because it hasn't looked like first half Ranger. This guy was so good. He looked like a Cy Young candidate going into the All-Star break. And now all of a sudden, he's the forgotten man. I think he's as big an X factor as we have in the National League.
And what's interesting too is he's been a guy that's thrown really well in the postseason in the past, but that's irrelevant when you're limping into the postseason, not looking like yourself. So I'm with you. Like that seems to be the big question because look, the good news is the Phillies have Christopher Sanchez, who's thrown well and just continues to look really solid. But you got to decide if you're going to roll with Christopher Sanchez or Ranger Suarez more. Who's going to get the ball in Game 3, and I think that's something that has to be figured out within the next few starts before the end of the season, which we're only probably going to get what 2 more each,
Two more.
probably
Yeah,
roughly.
I see 2 turns remaining.
So I mean that's the tough part. I almost had it a little bit broader where I was just gonna say everybody but Wheeler
Mm-hmm.
because even Nola, man, like I know he's Nola and you assume he's a vet, he's gonna lock in and make it work. But I've been a little bit more tapped into his last couple of starts. I was there in person for a start in Miami,
Yeah.
and he just seems more one dimensional than before. Where it's so much dependence on that knuckle curve, which is unbelievable. It's elite, but I'm seeing him at times just like kind of struggle to get guys to respect any other offering consistently. Still think he can go out there and give you a shot and a good shot. And like you said, we kind of know what he is in the postseason for the most part. But I do think that there's just like a larger conversation of after Wheeler, like who's really going to step up. Nola's got to be good then too. But you also have that Ranger conversation as well. So I think Ranger is the more specific guy to zero in on for sure. But I think you could make the case that Nola could be a little bit better of late too. And I could just see him being one of those guys that just may struggle to miss enough bats in the postseason.
I can totally see that. What I will also say is Aaron Nola is 31 years old and a pretty young 31 years old. Kind of pitches like he's 34. Does he not? I know he's
Yes.
reliable, but it feels like, oh, Nola is losing a tick. And this is the first time that I've really felt that. And I know that the season long numbers are really solid, but last 5 starts have not been that good for Aaron Nola. And I see what you're saying, where it's like, is this guy laboring at the end of the year? He shouldn't be because he's been one of the workhorses of Major League Baseball over the last half decade.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm at. But I do agree with you that I think with what Nola can still go out there and do, like what Rangers been looking like of late, I think he's probably the guy to watch a little bit more,
yeah.
like intently.
The Mets, they currently hold the final wild card spot by a 2 game cushion over Atlanta. My thing here is, can Lindor run through the tape?
Yep.
And what I mean by that is like, okay, cool, individual accolade is sick. He's 3 stolen bases away from 30-30. But he also needs to continue to stay in overdrive to hold off Atlanta. Atlanta's good. Albies is back. Like I I I think the Mets are going to do it. I have concerns about the Braves, which we'll get to in a moment, but I think they, run through that tape. They get the job done. They clinch a postseason berth because Francisco Lindor is awesome for the final 10 days.
I couldn't go any other way. I knew you were going to go Lindor as well, and I wanted to try to mention somebody else. We talked about Pete Alonso needing to step up in the meantime, and he's done that. But
Yeah.
there's no more clear thing to watch than Francisco Lindor's health because he is the heartbeat of this team, and in every aspect. I mean, so it's just that simple, and I think that they should be careful with him. I don't think he's going to play like every single day as he starts to get rolling back here. Maybe he does. Maybe he just forces their hand and says, I'm good to go. Let's go. But I think they've got to kind of find that balance of keeping him in the lineup and helping the team win, but also maybe giving him a day here and there so that he can run through that tape and potentially help them in the postseason if they get there. So it's one, I think, how healthy is he, and then two, it's how do the Mets maneuver that and go about it. I will say Jose Iglesias, by the way, has just been fantastic, and what a godsend he has been for them, just to be able to fill in up the middle. I know he hasn't played a ton of short, only 6 games there, but just having another infielder that
Yeah.
has been as good as he has been. He's a 135 WRC plus this year.
Mm-hmm.
The dude's hitting
Mm-hmm.
330. He's not going to qualify for the batting title because it's only 243 plate appearances. But my goodness, like he actually could have been in that conversation. It's been amazing to see what he has done, and I mean, you start to look at his career now. It's pretty wild that he's having the best year of his career at 34 while dropping a pop hit like that. It's just what a year for
What,
him.
what what's tough is we'd be talking about him in terms of Hall of Fame candidacy if he became a pop star when he was in Detroit. Like he started this too late.
Yeah, he's 34 starting this thing. I mean, but it does take some pressure off. But yeah, I'd be silly to say anything other than Francisco Lindor's health with this ball club.
Yeah. Atlanta, what do you have for them?
Similar conversation in terms of just health and getting right overall. But the thing with Atlanta is I think you could zero in on a few different things. And I think the health thing could be a trend. You can almost say that with any team. So for me, it's really Max Fried. And I just want to see Max Fried be Max Fried because he's shown some flashes this year since coming back and being healthy. And he's got I think really just being able to build up the workload this year and be available and he's going to throw probably 170 innings this year. Like if Fried can be I think closer to the peak Fried that we've seen where it looks like a frontline guy rather than a 3-5 guy. I mean that changes everything because I clearly don't have any questions. No one has questions about Chris Sale. You feel pretty good about Schwellenbach and Morton potentially just kind of flanking the back end of that rotation with whatever you may get from Reynaldo Lopez, depending on the health situation there. But I think that almost makes it even more important. A lot of these teams in the playoffs, or even down in the stretch here, are going to have a number two starter that's very, very good.
Yeah.
And Max Fried is good enough to match any of those two starters or even beat them. So can he do that? And what does he look like? I know that's more of a playoff conversation. They got to get there, but it'd be the same thing as the Mets in a way where it's just can they get healthy? And because I just feel like it really is a matter of Austin Riley getting healthy, Ozzy Albies getting healthy, and that whole conversation because there's too many guys that just shouldn't be in this lineup every single day, like Jared Kelnick, Gio Urshela, Whit Merrifield. Like those are not guys you want in the lineup every single day.
Even Arcia this year, man. Like
Yeah.
Arcia has been a very tough watch, especially offensively. Whit Merrifield has been playing way more. Also, did you see the thing between him and Bueller? Like Merrifield, after his comments, what couple days ago, after he got hit with a heater, and then barking at Bueller after a fastball was high and tight, and let's see, fastball high and tight. Then he punched out on a sweeper that was halfway into the lefty batter's box, and he starts barking at Bueller. I'm like, dude, take a
He
breather.
barked it. I didn't see that. I didn't see him bark at
Yeah,
all.
he
He's
barked at
turning
me.
into a little bit of a curmudgeon here,
A
huh?
little
With
bit of a curmudgeon.
30,
Yeah,
35 years old, he's turning into a get off my lawn guy.
he's bouncing around a little bit, but Whit Merrifield has unlocked that get off my lawn thing. So now what I'm looking for is if Whit Merrifield actually goes full Clint Eastwood. I'm kidding. What I'm looking at, I had a tough time identifying something that I was particularly excited about when it came to the Atlanta Braves. Um, Frankly, it comes from a place of negativity. Is the best pitcher in baseball going to be left out of the postseason? Like, that's what I wrote down. And it sucks. Not often do we see the best pitcher in baseball left out. We see the best players sometimes, like Ohtani was being left out when he was in LA, Trout was being left out when he was in LA. Those two have something in common. It had to do with their employer, Ohtani's former employer. But like pitchers, I feel like they're always fronting a good team because you have that ace. And pitching is more infectious than hitting, I do think, where like you could have the MVP in your lineup. That doesn't mean the eight hitter is going to be good, but everybody kind of feeds off an ace, I think. It would suck if we were deprived of postseason sale because
Yeah,
I think he would be an electric watch.
I agree with you, and I think that's a huge part of this whole thing too. Is I want to be able to go see that guy, throw it on the big stage with the way that he has looked and the confidence that he's thrown with this year. And I think just from that lens as well, not having Strider in this rotation, I think it's again that freed aspect too, where I want to see him throwing like a front end guy as well. And if he's doing that, you've got a 1-2 punch that can stack up with just about anybody. So
Exactly.
that's what I'm keyed in on because otherwise it's just a health conversation again with a team that's just been absolutely decimated all year long.
Wow. By the way, breaking news, passing, the Baltimore Orioles have
Oh,
DFA'd Craig Kimbrell. Holy smokes.
wow.
Wow. Contender
We
going
got
to
some
pick him up?
pushback on that one, I think, earlier in the year when we are like, I don't know if it's gonna work. Peter was kind of leading
Yeah.
that conversation. Like, trust me, you're not gonna trust him later in the year, but he had been throwing really well. Um, and they paid him a lot of money
They paid him
to end
$13
up
million to
that
DFA him
never
for the
made
Homestead.
sense. That never made sense. Even the
Never.
second the ink dried, we're like 13 for him.
Didn't you call it the worst deal of the offseason?
I think I did.
I think you did. I called Plesac for one,
Oh
the
yeah,
worst
yeah,
deal of
yeah.
the
I did
offseason.
call that the worst. I did call that the worst deal of the offseason. Yes.
Wow.
Well, looks like it.
Wow. That's crazy. And all of a sudden, that Orioles bullpen loses a lot of name recognition. I don't think they lose any like real high leverage ace that I'm going to. Like they don't lose their eighth inning guy. They lose a very volatile seventh. That's going to make you, clench your shoulders up and clench your teeth a little bit. So that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Going to Washington now. My thing is they're in the honeymoon phase with their young trio. Stay in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Abrams, James Wood, Dylan Cruz. While it's still fresh, just enjoy it.
It's that simple. Just enjoy these young, fun players. Jose Tena has been really impressive as well. Like this is Luis Garcia has been really good too. Every time I check in, he has stood out to me. This is a fun young group. Lean into it and yeah, just have fun watching them get better every single AB. Dylan Cruz beating out an infield single, then stealing second, then stealing third. Just gamer, and then you have Wood who can hit the ball 430, and you have Abrams who I know it's been a frustrating second half, but you know what he can do out there. It's just an enjoy the young talent that you have because I think very soon this team is going to start to have expectations and there's going to be pressure on these guys to perform, which is great. But for now it's enjoy watching them develop because it's cool when you can see a young core all at the same time, be able to get these reps together.
What you got on the Miami Marlins?
See, I wish I could say the same thing, but they don't really have that going on for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. But I think that the main thing to watch with the Marlins is the young guys playing still. Like it's not that exciting though. Like, are you getting excited to put on Connor Norby and Xavier Edwards on your MLB TV?
No.
I don't really think so. And if I go to a pitcher, it's only 1 to 2 more games. So I think really the thing to watch if you care, if you're a sicko enough, is just which one of these players, of these young guys, can really carve out a role for themselves next year. Whether that be a Kyle Stowers, whether that be a Connor Norby, who I think has already kind of done that. I think Xavier Edwards has already kind of done that. But a Jonah Bride, an Otto Lopez, a Griffin Conine, like all of those guys with these final handful of games,
Yeah.
who can kind of earn themselves a solid spot to open up the season next year is probably the key thing to watch.
So my thing is actually it has nothing to do with anybody between the chalk. I want every Sandy update imaginable. That's my thing to watch.
Him and Yuri are way ahead of schedule, which is awesome.
Sandy was 97 to 99 in live BP, and Skip said, quote, opening day form. That is the best thing that I've like
That's
ever heard.
It's the least surprising thing ever too, when you just know like the way he operates. I'll never forget Don Mattingly saying that he has to tell him to slow down when it comes to the workouts and everything. Like it's like too much. And I think the tone that he's setting, and an underrated aspect of this whole thing too, I think is the fact that you have uh, Yuri Perez undergoing the same thing right behind him.
Yes.
And he's like baby Sandy, and Sandy's setting the tone on how you rehab, how you get back from this. And I'm sure they've been doing a lot of it together. And Yuri is like apparently like 4 or 5 months ahead of schedule too.
That's
So
crazy.
I think the idea of them kind of going through this together is actually pretty cool and out of something pretty bad. And I think it's gonna bring them both out the other side, stronger, because also you have Sandy just being pushed by a younger kid as well, that probably has unlimited energy. So it's a positive development in this whole thing. And I think the other thing might just be the other Marlins arms that have been out for much of the season. Like as we're recording this, tonight, Ryan Weathers is going to start, so that'll be yesterday as people are listening. Like, how does he look? He'd been looking really good. Braxton Garrett threw a rehab start 2 days ago. Like, can these arms kind of get back healthy enough? Because then the Marlins will have some decisions to make in the offseason as to, what they want to do with that rotation, because they've got plenty of arms. Luzardo seems to be trending pretty
Yeah.
well. Like, all of these guys are finally healthy. The season's over, but the fact that they could be healthy and maybe throw a little bit, then it allows you to be a little bit more, I think, aggressive potentially with what you want to do in the trade market, but in the offseason or early in the season next year.
No doubt. And I'll tell you, with Sandy hitting a live BP now, it sounds like he's going to be full go for spring training, and
Oh,
Yuri
full,
Perez
yeah,
might not be
full
that
go.
far behind at all.
Yep.
So.
Which is, I mean, changes the Marlins' outlook a little bit if they could just piece together a mediocre offense.
Totally. And the thing is, like, Jacksonville's got a good lineup right now, man. Like, we're going to see Augustine Ramirez catching these guys at some point very,
Yep.
very soon. And it's going to be very fun to monitor that. We'll go to the National League Central here, and we'll start with the division leading Milwaukee Brewers. For me, it was like super easy. Can you finalize making me look like an idiot? Like,
Yeah.
this starting rotation
Yeah.
actually prove to me that I'm dumb and I don't know what I'm talking about. They have done it. I want to see two more turns from Tobias Myers, from Aaron Savali, from Colin Ray got a save a couple days ago, I think. Like, dude, what? How? What? Why? When? Where? I just need to see this happen again. And frankly, like this is something I'm watching into the postseason because that's where I doubt them mightily.
Yeah. I still don't know who the hell the three is.
Yeah.
And that's my thing to watch, is like, who the hell is the three? I, DL Hall looked terrible last time out. Um, Aaron Savali had a decent one, so that might be the guy. Montes you traded for, but like, man, he serves them up. That's the thing. I'm like, please, somebody emerge and just make me feel comfortable enough where it's like, okay, that guy could be the three. I just don't even know who the hell the three is right now. So that's my thing. Is it bullpen game three? Is that what you go with?
Maybe.
The other would be, can Jackson Chorio put the cherry on top of this
Yeah.
superstar second half and solidify himself as a budding superstar in this game?
Yeah.
I think that's the other side of it, where, I mean, we're at this point where he was the tying run on deck, and it's like we need to get Chorio to the plate. We need to get our 20-year-old to the plate, to try to extend this game. Like that's where they're at, in terms of, or that's more where Jackson's at, I should say. That's awesome. So that's my other aside is, can he really just continue to finish off this budding superstar second half, which has really helped hedge the loss of Christian Yelich for the remainder of this season. But the true question has to be, as we go through the rotation two more times, you probably ride the hot hand. Who the hell is the hot hand going to be to get the ball game three?
And we'll see. Like, hey, if Savali gives you, 13 combined innings of 2-run ball, which is frankly like not outside of the realm of possibilities with what he's done in a Milwaukee Brewers uniform. It was outside the realm of possibilities of what he did in a Rays uniform. But if he does that, I think you just give the ball to him game three and you call it a day. And then, game four, if you get to a CS, all of a sudden, I do think that is firmly a bullpen day. And you might have like Montes, I guess, open that thing, but I,
Yeah, or like Colin Ray just goes three or four like that. You can piece it together, and I think
yeah,
that's probably what they do. So
yes,
I'm just very excited to see how they do that.
right.
So I think they're going to get those answers kind of in the next couple weeks, just figuring all of that out. So that whole part of it is fun and fascinating.
The Cubs, what do you got here?
I mean, I wish that there was a more specific. I just feel like it's a lot of like the rinse and repeat of last year as well, where they're just it's a similar kind of disappointment where they do play well down the stretch overall, and then they come up a little bit short. But we're gonna have to say the same thing that we said last year, which is just like how do things look going into next season, right? Like what kind of momentum can they carry? And I think it's another one of those conversations of who really solidifies themselves as a piece of the puzzle for next year, especially out of these young guys. But I think the key thing would just be have some of the bats that have been inconsistent. Can they finish strong? And what does it look like? Pete Crow Armstrong seems to have really hit his stride down the stretch here, but it would be really good to carry some momentum into the offseason. And Isaac Paredes has not been good since the trade, right? Can he finish strong and carry some momentum into the offseason? Other than that, I just don't really know what else to say about this ball club in terms of what you're looking for over the next couple weeks.
We chose the same thing. I ID'd two guys. I said on top of PCA, who's been awesome. Pete Crow Armstrong has actually been phenomenal. 41 games since August 1st. He's hitting 309 with a 904 OPS. Wow, man. He has
Yeah.
started that blossom. It's been later and not as crazy as Jackson Chorio, but like PCA is coming into his own after a really, really slow start to his major league career. But for me, it was Isaac Paredes. Like, I need to see Paredes put together a decent week and a half, decent
Please.
week to take us into the offseason and make me feel like this was the right decision for the Chicago Cubs. And I firmly believe that it was the right
I
decision
do.
for the Chicago Cubs. Like, I saw a clip. I know this name has made its round, but Dan Bernstein cited Matt Chapman being a 5-win player this year. Said the Cubs are 5 games out of a wild card
Oh,
berth as it stands right now. Matt Chapman's a 5-win player. Like, he was right there in the offseason. And I just want to make it really clear that's not how war works. Like, you add Matt Chapman to this Cubs team, they're not 5 wins better. Having said that, I would like for them to have the answer at third base, and I do firmly still believe that that answer is Isaac Paredes.
yeah, don't call him Bernstein.
Yeah,
The interesting thing too is that it's 43 games that he's played with the Cubs, right? If he has a nice 12 games or however many left, he could still finish the year as a Cub with a WRC plus above league average. It's 91 right now. It's a 91 WRC plus. He's not striking out that much. He's still walking at a good clip. He's just not slugging. And the whole question had been, and that you and I have been very much on the forefront of refuting, is he can hit in other environments. Like he's still going to be able to slug. And I still genuinely do believe that. But
yeah,
there clearly has been a bit of an adjustment period, whether it's a mental side of things. Like I remember Nick Castellanos struggling with that when he started playing in different environments. Talked about how it was affecting him mentally, and then I think it kind of makes it pile up on you. He is capable of slugging in other environments. I'll die on that hill until probably halfway through next year,
right.
and then I'll just say okay, I was wrong. If he
Raise
can't,
Merchant. Yeah.
if he can't turn the tides there, but that has to be the big thing here, right? Like, could he just have a stretch of a few good games where you're starting to see him elevate to the pull side, hit the ball out, and it doesn't need to be a wall scraper like many may think at 320 feet down the line, like
Right.
it is in Tropicana. But also the health of Justin Steele, he's back.
Mhm.
He's going to make probably two more starts. Can he just be pain free and look comfortable? That'll also be huge for next year.
I think Waveland is beyond the bleachers and left. If Isaac Paredes puts one on Waveland, I might just tweet "suck it, haters."
Yeah,
That would be
I
huge.
hope. I hope. No, he needs to go backside homer.
Yeah, I can see that. Right. And I think that's Sheffield, beyond the bleachers and right. If he goes to Sheffield, I'm going to tweet "suck it, haters" in all caps. St. Louis, Jordan Walker, 4 homers this year have all come in the month of September. He had 0 in his first 26 games. He has 4 in his last 14, including taking Bailey Falter deep earlier this week. Walker and Wynn. This was my number one storyline coming into this year, aside from the obvious, like Ohtani with the Dodgers and shit like that. Do the Cardinals have their co-faces of the future in Walker and Wynn? First month said, hell no, Jack, you're on drugs. Now it's like, wait, maybe, sort of, kind of. He's still really young. I would love to see an electric week and a half from Walker and Wynn.
Hit a nuke 2 days ago. Absolute rocket. Uh, Walker, I mean, this is the thing. I tweeted this, but I'm just so happy that the Cardinals are out of the race just so this guy can get the MLB at bats he deserves without having to look over his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's just the way that he has been handled has just been totally unfair and so difficult to be able to actually get up there and not press. He's 22. He's going to be 22 the entirety of the offseason and at the start of next season as well. He's just not had a fair shake here. So, yeah, being able to build some momentum and just consistently play up there, I think he's already shown that he's getting more comfortable and looks like he can be a guy that starts the year solid next year and hopefully can just get that runway. But I think that's a huge aspect of this. And then yeah, Mason Wynn just getting on the other side of the ups and downs that come with a rookie season. Those are the two guys you're looking at, right? Because if you bring back Goldschmidt, it's going to be in a lesser role.
Right.
Arenado's your guy, and you've got the other veterans for the most part. So those are the two guys that you're really got to be locked in on and focus. And the average age of the rotation is like 48 years old.
Right.
So there's not much to look at over there.
No doubt. Cincinnati.
You go first on that one.
So Ellie for 70. I would like to see him swipe 6 bags in the next 10 games. That'd be cool. Rhett Lauder has 2 more turns in the rotation. I will watch the Rhett Lauder starts. This has been an incredibly disappointing year for Cincinnati. A lot of that has been, predicated on their health or lack thereof. And that sucks. And there's nothing you can do about that. I would love to see Rhett Lauder prove that he is a mid rotation arm going into next season because it's been so disappointing for Nick Lodolo. It's been so disappointing for Graham Ashcraft. And I know that we talked about this last week. Like, I would love to see that steadying presence of a Rhett Lauder just firmly stamp, I'm here, motherfuckers.
Yeah, that would be huge. And so I would say if I'm a Reds fan, I'm probably watching the next two Rhett Lauder starts with as much intent as any because of what that can mean for next year, just as another steady arm that they just desperately need with all the volatility and lack of health there throughout the rotation. The other side is probably just the performance of Noelvi Marte, right, where he misses so much time with the suspension. He has been a very volatile prospect himself and has very much struggled this year. I mean, if you look at the course of the season, guy's got a 49 WRC plus. I think he's been one of the worst in the league in terms of WAR at negative 1.2 FWAR. I'm not saying he needs to light the world on fire and get these numbers right. There's not enough games left in the season to
He
do that.
needs to
But
not be really bad. Yeah.
yeah, he's had a couple multi-hit games. He's hitting in the 9 hole, man. Like he's had a couple multi-hit games over the last week, and is starting to swing it a little bit better. Just being able to have a decent close out week and a half to the season, I think would go a long way for a guy that's been through a lot this year.
Yeah.
Between the struggles and the suspension, and they need to figure out what they're doing because you have Jonathan India for 1 more year. Yeah, well, third base, you're paying a guy to play the position next year, and Jamer Candelario, I know it was disappointing, but he's still under contract. He's going to play third, right? Matt McClain's going to come back, and he was a huge part of their success last year. He's going to play second. So what are you doing with Noelvi Marte? And that's not even mentioning you got Christian Encarnacion Strand who'll be back and healthy. So with Marte struggling this much, I mean, he even just needs to have a few good games here to instill a little bit more confidence, I think, in the Reds front office because all of a sudden you're either thinking about moving him to the outfield, I think,
Yeah.
or moving him, period. And that would be tough for the Reds because his value's never been lower. So I think that's definitely a big thing to watch here.
How about Pittsburgh?
Jared Jones, I'm keyed in on
Okay.
just to see what it looks like now that he's back healthy and throwing again. Like, can he look more like that guy that just got up and was just overwhelming hitters? Because his outlook is huge for the Pirates' outlook next year too, right? You know you got the ace and Paul Skeens. You know that you got Mitch Keller, who can be a very very good three or even a solid two. But who's going to be that third option for you? I really think it can be Jared Jones, and he can be fantastic, but he hasn't quite looked the same after missing some time with the discomfort there. So that's probably the key side of this for me. And then I just think which bats can just show anything right now is important. Like out of the Nick Gonzalez, Brian De La Cruz, Jared Triolo, of all those guys, like who can show something because
Yeah.
they're going to take whoever that they can get that they think is going to give them above average offense next season. I don't think that there's many emotional ties to any players in particular. Nick York could be in that conversation as well.
Yeah, York just had a 3-hit day in game 2 of his major league career. So followed an 0 for 4 with a 3 for 4. Like that's a correction that you love to see. And, that buys him a spot essentially on the opening day roster for next year. I like the Jared Jones shout. And Josh Wetzel's the announcer for Rochester, AAA affiliate of the Nats. He does some fill in radio stuff for the Nats as well. And he walked into the booth last week and asked me a question that I was like fully stumped on. He said, "Who do you like more, Jared Jones or Bubba Chandler?" And I was like,
That's
"Oh,
crazy that you said that because Peter and I just had this conversation on the roundup.
really?"
Just not even about that. I said he was making his Jared Jones like slightly overrated case without really saying it.
Well, he
And
texted me that after like his one bad start in May.
yeah,
And I was like, "All right, whatever, man."
um, I did say that I would take Bubba Chandler over Jared Jones, but Skeens is obviously in his own world.
Yeah, I think I sided with Bubba because Bubba has that changeup that Jones doesn't really have. Jones is a two-pitch guy. Chandler can be a three-pitch guy, and he's shown the flashes of a fourth. Now, Jones also showed that curveball more than he really ever has, either last start or the start before that. But Bubba can do that. And like, if Jones is 97 and Bubba's 97, I think I like the arsenal and just the fastball characteristics of a Bubba a little bit more than a Jared Jones.
Yep,
So that's where I stand. Now, having said that, that is a phenomenal question to be asked because
great
both
question.
have the opportunity to be twos in Major League Baseball, which is really cool.
Yeah, I would just say of those groupings too, just the Billy Cook, Nick York, Nick Gonzalez, all of that
Mhm.
stuff. Who can maybe separate themselves a little bit over these last handful of games?
Yeah, my thing was O'Neill Cruz in center. He's day to day with an ankle
Yeah,
thing right now, but
yeah,
I
I
want to
forgot
watch
about that.
10 more games of O'Neill Cruz in center field.
That's actually the number one answer. What the hell does that look like? I think is definitely important.
And I'll tell you, it's kind of looked okay so far. So I'm excited to see 10 more games of it. We're going to get to the National League West here in a moment, starting with the Dodgers, but we're going to take a quick break before that. The Dodgers' answer is very, very clear. How we doing this postseason rotation thing? Like, how we doing the starting pitching thing? Bobby Miller has what, an 8.52 right now? Gavin Stone is trying to work back from a shoulder thing. Tony Gonsolin is making what, a third rehab start with Oklahoma City. The locks are Flaherty, Yamamoto, and Bueller at this point.
Yep.
Is there a fourth? Like
And
they
you're talking
can
about two guys coming off of injury in Yamamoto and Bueller.
exactly. I this is as weak as I was. This is weaker than I could have possibly imagined. The Dodger rotation being at this juncture in the season because there were so many guys that they could turn to. And the jokes are there. The jokes are in abundance on the social media about the IL rotation for the LA Dodgers. And it's all fun and games because they're the best team in baseball until you get to a best of five postseason series in the NLDS. And then it's like, oh shit, Shohei Ohtani might not make it past the D8 or the DS. Like that sucks.
Yeah, that
I
would
want
suck.
to see them put their best foot forward.
I agree. And that might be with Otani pitching, like we talked about. They might do that. So that could be a wrinkle in this thing. Obviously, the 50-50 chase is going to be a big thing to watch,
Sure.
but that goes without being said. It really is, yeah, just who's available and who can get themselves back into the conversation in the next 2 weeks because maybe a Kershaw does get himself back and be available. I think clearly the ship has sailed on glass now, unfortunately. I should say the plane took off and we don't know where. Um, River Ryan's out for season. You're not going to get Sheehan back. Like, so it really is kind of that open ended. One, can Walker keep stringing together these good starts
Mm-hmm.
and really carry that momentum into the postseason, which I think he can, and it's been awesome to see him do that. Two, can Yamamoto continue to throw pain free after coming back from a shoulder issue? Shoulder issues always freak me out. And then three is just who else is in the fold there, because I think it's become very clear that you're not throwing Bobby Miller out there in the you can't, you literally can't. He might even be a candidate to be left off of the postseason roster in its entirety,
Correct.
because he's just that broken right now. He's given up, but going into the last game where he got shelled in Miami, he'd given up 10 home runs in his last 25 innings, 9 of which were on the fastball. He can't locate any secondaries. He's going straight to a fastball that's always been hittable, and I just don't think he's an option. I think Landon Knack could end up being a guy that grabs a spot too if some of these other guys aren't healthy. If Gonsolin doesn't look right and Kershaw still isn't healthy, could end up being a Landon Knack situation with a couple more quality starts here to end out the season.
Which is crazy that Knack could be starting a game in the postseason for the LA Dodgers.
He would
Wow.
have been like their fourth internal option, right? We would have been after Gavin Stone. Even Kyle Hurt was ahead of him
Mm-hmm.
in the pecking order. So not only is he far from the top five option in the rotation, he was barely a top five option of the prospects that they had. I mean, River Ryan was ahead of him as well.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that was outside the top 10, essentially, coming into the season, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey man, you got game four. You ready for this? Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
San Diego, how cold is Manny gonna be for the final go? I was listening to it on the radio and I was like, okay, based on the description from the Padres radio announcer, that was the craziest homer of the year on Tuesday night.
It was
And
up
then I
there.
went home and I watched the at bat. And that was one of the crazier home runs of the season. I think PCA Willie Peralta earlier in the year in AAA still takes the cake, but Manny Machado getting hosed on 3-0 and 3-1 called strikes and then killing that ball and sending Petco into the frenzy that he did, that was beauty on Tuesday night.
It was one of the most electric things I've seen in a while. Because he fully also like threw the bat, took the elbow guard off the first time. It was well outside the first time. I don't blame him for doing that. The second time, I think it was borderline, maybe even caught the top of the zone. But he probably figured, oh well, if you didn't give me the last one, you're gonna give me that one. He probably shouldn't have thrown the bat the second time, but he did. So picking it up twice, just looking absolutely livid, and then putting that swing on that ball like he did, I mean, and just standing there and soaking it in, that was one of the coldest swings I've seen in a while. If Machado is going nuclear, this thing might be over with the way that everybody else is swinging it. So I think that's a great one. I'm looking at the rotation, and I'm looking at none other than Yu Darvish. I think Cease, you're going to take the good with the bad, and it's really the great with the bad. It's really the elite with the bad. And the bad has not even been as abundant at all this year. Musgrove, I really do like what we've seen. I just think you're also going to get that inconsistency, and it is what it is. The only other guy that I think could really, when he's right, grab a rotation spot in the postseason and make a difference is Michael King. But I also think to a degree, you know what you're getting with Michael King. Though when
Yeah.
he's on, he's really on, and there's sometimes those days where he's a little off. The thing with Yu Darvish is he's you freaking Darvish, and
Mm-hmm.
there's only one guy in that rotation that's Yu Darvish, and I think just him clicking on all cylinders is a different beast than everybody in that rotation not named Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
I think even a Musgrove and a Michael King clicking on all cylinders is not a Yu Darvish clicking on all cylinders in the postseason and what he's capable of doing. So that's where my eyes are as he works his way back from injury and then that prolonged absence for other reasons, for personal reasons. Can we get a couple good starts here down the stretch and then carry that into the postseason?
So I'm totally with you. I think the two postseason locks as it stands right now are Cease and King. And King has earned that over the course of the entirety of the regular season. But Darvish and Musgrove have the chance to be a level above Michael King. And based on what we've seen from both those guys, they have a chance if they all of a sudden capture that magic of the postseason, they could level up beyond Cease. We haven't seen it yet with Dylan Cease, so we don't truly know what Cease is going to look like in a postseason setting where every single pitch matters. But Musgrove, we know what that looks like, and it's nasty.
Mm-hmm.
Darvish, we know what that looks like because he's been around for 15 years at this point. So I'm very excited for the Darvish thing. I had Michael King written down as well because he's past his previous high in innings. He's 60 innings past what he was at last year with the Yankees. Granted, he did throw 160 innings in the minor leagues one year between double and triple with New York, but I think that was 2018. So we're 6 years removed from a volume like this for Michael King. So I am curious what it looks like moving forward, but I think the bigger thing to watch is the Musgrove and Darvish starts, and then Manny being Manny. Sorry, Mr. Ramirez.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a new Manny on the block now, and I mean, he's. I think by the time he's done it, it won't be that far off. I think Ramirez is one of the best right-handed hitters to ever do this thing, but
Yeah.
I think people are really sleeping on what these Machado numbers could cumulatively look like
Yeah,
when you get when you get maybe 7, 8 more years under his belt, because I think he's going to easily do that.
for sure. Arizona, we fall off after Gallen and Kelly, and Gallen has been throwing well in the month of September. Merrill Kelly has been solid in the month of September. Brandon Pfaadt has thrown 12 innings this month, 23 hits allowed. Eduardo Rodriguez, 13 innings, 19 hits allowed. Jordan Montgomery is 2024 Jordan Montgomery. I know we've been saying, oh, it's Jamont in the postseason. Get Gumby in the postseason. That'll be great.
No,
He's not Rangers Jordan Montgomery at this point. He's just not. So I need to see Pfaadt or Erod take a step up in the final two turns.
I can't say anything different. And I think those are the two guys that actually have a shot. I have no faith in Montgomery being able to do that. So you could group him in there just because he'll probably get another start with the unfortunate injury to Ryan Nelson, I, which is just a killer for them with the way he was throwing down the stretch. So yeah, it really is just who can grab that third spot, and I really do think it's between Fott and Rodriguez, and if it's kind of by default, then it's going to be Fott. I don't want it to be by default, right? I want somebody to step up here. So that has to be the number one thing to look at. The offense, though, it's been frustrating. They've dropped two in
Mhm.
Colorado. Uh, the offense has been phenomenal in the second half. It's been one of the best in baseball, and they're so deep at this point. They'll be fine offensively. That won't be the issue. So that has to be the thing to key in on.
Two more, San Francisco and Colorado. With the Giants, it's simple. Player option at 38.5 next year. Is Blake Snell making his two final starts in a Giants uniform? I'd watch that if I were a Giants fan. You could say, hey, is Elliot Ramos going to hit a ball into McCovey Cove again? Like, okay, I am keyed in on two more Snell starts, and my fingers are crossed that they figure out a way to retain him this offseason, possibly on a rework deal.
That's got to be it. I mean, you have a frontline type of arm going for you that really looks like he's back into his form again, and you might lose him. So enjoy those two starts, and I think also the way that he throws in those two starts could actually, because it's such a small amount. I mean, that's 10% of his season. That it could make a little bit of a difference. I think no matter what, he's probably opting out,
Yeah.
but that has to be it, right? You look
Yes.
around everywhere else. There's just really not that much to see. Maybe can Tyler Fitzgerald keep finishing strong, and because he has a really hit a wall, I think. But none of that stuff is that exciting to me. So it's got to just be what Blake Snell looks like, and just watching those last couple starts of the year, and potentially as a Giant. But I do think they end up retaining him.
How about those fighting Colorado Rockies? Anything?
I'm on Zach Veen watch still.
Uh huh.
I'm waiting. They have to add him to the 40. I'm waiting. They gotta call this man up. I feel like it's gotta happen. But other than that, it's just a combination. I think of the young guys, and then can Nolan Jones just string together now? If he was out the whole freaking year, can he just
Yeah.
string together, a couple weeks of healthy and good games as he works his way back and what's kind of been a lost year for him?
Yeah.
I struggle to find any other stories within that. You want to see Romo progress, their rookie catcher.
Yeah.
But other than that, what else are we really going to talk about here? It's really just how do some of these young guys perform mixed with the veterans that we have no intrigue or conversation to have around, like a Charlie Blackman or even a Ryan McMahon. Like, what are we going to talk about with them? Or even a Brendan Rodgers. Like, what is there to talk about with Brendan Rodgers at this point? Like, it's just how do some of these young guys perform, and that's about it.
Yeah. And I already chalk it up as a good year for Tovar. I already chalk it up as a great year for Bretton Doyle. I simply wrote, what are we doing at catcher? Romo hasn't played in a week. Hunter Goodman's catching. Jacob Stallings is catching. I'm like, where's Romo?
Well,
And
and I think
why?
he has the yips too, which is crazy. I don't know if he's overcome them yet, but when I was in Denver, man, like I can say with 100% confidence he had the yips. He couldn't throw the ball back to the mound. He'd have
Dude.
to have it sit back into his hand and then flip it almost like a free throw over to the pitcher, and it got to the point where the Marlins were taking extra bags. So, that stinks because that's a full, like, that's a mental side of things where, like, it just shows you how difficult baseball can be from the mental side. But, like, why just have your catcher with the yips just sitting there? And he was also playing through it at that point, and I think it could be affecting him offensively a little bit too. Maybe it's better not to send him back to Albuquerque and deal with it there and just be around a big league ball club. But it's just a weird situation there. So that's another thing to just monitor. Do they get Romo any more run the rest of this year?
Yeah, I mean, Hunter Goodman has like it's not like he's been good either. Like if Hunter
Well, and they also
Goodman
they shut down the catching thing with Goodman. Like the guy's
and all
barely caught because they were like, no, you're an outfielder now. We don't have interest in having you catch much. And
and
then
he's
now
caught what
he's
three of the last five.
yeah, and dude, he's this is the most Rockies thing ever. My goodness, this is the most Rockies thing ever. He has caught more games at the major league level this year than the minor league level.
Oh,
What?
oh God. I love them. They're my favorite team.
They're one of one, man.
Oh
They are
my.
one of one. I know he's been hurt too, but like this is a guy that you did not have catch much at all last year either. Like fully phased him out of that role. He caught 13 games last year. 13 games. They focused on first base, outfield, all that stuff, and now they're throwing him into the catcher role. So that's something to watch. What does that look like?
Yeah, the Hunter Goodman catching experience. Does Romo play again this year? Or does he just kind of hang out on the active roster and do the Nasim Nunez thing? We'll find out. But that is one thing that we're watching for every single team in the National League. Get your merch. Every link you need is in the episode description. Subscribe to our new newsletter. I read that today, about 30 minutes before we recorded. So that went out yesterday, but that is going out every week, being spearheaded by the phenomenal folks at Just Baseball. And with that, I think mailbag tomorrow.